feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming in Monday morning. It's October 20th, and this is our last episode before the Timberwolves season begins. So I thought our final episode, we would do a show on like final thoughts before the season begins and also give our season-long predictions. I'll be joined by Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick to do that. But before we get started, I did want to say thank you to the many, many people that came out for Wolves Fest at Falling Knife on Saturday. It's just an awesome community they've created out there at Falling Knife around the Wolves. We're lucky to be a part of it. I think I left at like 8:30 and I was grabbing my bag from the back room, which was also where they were doing the Naz Reid tattoos. And when I left at 8:30, I think more than 40 people had already gotten Naz Reid tattoos, like real actual tattoos, and that was as many as the Pack Tats guys could get. There was over 100 names on the list. It's another example of a crazy fan base, and another example of something we are lucky to be a part of. So thank you again to Falling Knife and the many vendors there for making that a really cool day, and of course for those of you that came out or just listened to the episode afterwards. Quickly before we get started, I did want to let you know the schedule for the show this week as we now move more into regular season mode. We're going to generally this season be looking to do 5 episodes a week. When I'm traveling, it's a little bit harder to do that. And I am going to Portland and LA for the first 2 games. So after this episode, the next episode will be Kyle and I in Portland. We'll record from Moda Center on Wednesday night after the season opener, and then we'll have that pod in your feeds. Thursday morning is when that will come out. We're also planning on doing an episode on Thursday afternoon with Britt to get his thoughts on the opener. That'll just be Britt and I. And then on Friday night, Chris Hine and I will we'll be in LA and we'll do a pod for the Wolves game against the Lakers. We'll also record that from crypto.com arena. It's crazy. That's weird to read, a little scary that all that's happening this week, but I'm excited. Can't believe the season's here. Let's do it. One more preseason pod, which is final preseason thoughts and season-long predictions with Jace Frederick coming up next. Let's go. All right, we are now joined by Jace Frederick for our final show here before the Wolves season gets underway. And I thought we would do some sort of final thoughts, and at some point we got to give our season-long predictions. So we're going to do that today as well, win totals, whatever. Jace, we put together a short list of whatever final thoughts before the season even means. And I texted you that on Sunday while I was watching football, and definitely did not put my list together until this morning, and having coffee, and I'm thinking about that. I've spent this whole month writing about, talking about this Wolves team over and over again. I feel like I finally got to the point where I'm like, I'm not sure I have a really good feel for this team. As much as I feel like I've learned whatever in training camp and preseason and stuff like that. And I don't mean that in like a negative way. I feel like there's this upswing possibilities that I can really understand happening. And there's like a low 40s type of, but I can't pin it all down. Is this just, we've spent too much time thinking about them, or I don't know. Where do you land on that?
I mean, it's exactly how I feel. I know you did a bold predictions episode with Kyle, and then I was writing up my annual bold prediction story, and I was just less confident in all of it. And I didn't really have any bold proclamations because I just am not sure about this team and the way they're going to go and the way they're going to come out and all of these things. And is it going to be like last year? They never really found an identity in my mind. Did they feel like they found one? Is it going to be very clear what it is game one over the first however many games? I don't know, because if it is a team that again comes out and you're like, oh, they're pretty good at A, B, C, and D. I don't know what they're exactly great at. It's tough to like peg those teams. They're definitely going to do this year. This is definitely going to happen this year. That's where I've been sitting at for this whole thing. Like even talking to people, like I know what they want to try to do or what they want to try to get better at. And this kind of veers into one of my thoughts already, but I just don't know if everybody's built for that. So like, can they sustain it throughout a season when it's not really the MO of a lot of these guys? That's where I'm at. Like,
and maybe you're wrong. And maybe you're wrong about that.
I might be wrong. Absolutely.
That's part of it too.
Right.
Because
there's no confidence in a lot of my
thing.
theories,
Yes. So this podcast could be awesome. Wow.
It's gonna be really good.
How did you take just the thoughts of this, and go ahead and you can start with one.
Yeah. So I think one of my main thoughts is this team, and I'll center in on Rudy for this one. It's with Rudy Gobert. It was just a lingering thought for me last year, watching them lean so heavily into Rudy and having him kind of be the one who dominated what was definitely a soft schedule down the stretch of the regular season, which they were kind of, they went on this massive run, 17-4 to finish. He was there for the final 17 of those games, so 13-4 with him. And his last 10 games was like, he's averaging almost 20 points and 15 rebounds, and wow. And then once the playoffs started, just veered away from it because that's when teams could game plan heavily, and their game plan was always leave Rudy alone and defend the other four with these five guys. And Minnesota, rather than like, we can't really crack this, so let's go to different players. I just don't know if I've asked Finch about this of like, do you start veering more into these other offensive rotations during the season and whatnot? And he's like, I think we have to win as many games as you have to win in the West, which makes sense to me. But then when I watched like the Thunder series, and every time you look at the numbers, it's like Rudy had a net rating of +5 in a series where they got wiped off the court. Then for me, it was like, okay, so was the offensive lineup good against the teams that you were probably going to beat no matter what in the Lakers and Warriors, and it wasn't good at all against an actually championship level team? Is Rudy the best answer against like an actual championship level team? If that's the case, do you need to make sure like is Rudy's offense one of the most important things for the season, or just being able to, not Rudy getting offense, but being able to play offense with Rudy on the court? Is that the most important thing to develop? That's just one of those where that dynamic is going to be what I'm watching kind of all season, because if it's just, hey, Rudy's dominating this against these bad teams, he's just bigger than a lot of these guys, whatever, like, great. But offensively, if the team doesn't pay attention to Rudy, they kind of bog down. Then I'm like, you don't have any answers yet for this problem that you're going to see in the playoffs. Just the whole dynamic of Rudy. If there's actual improvement on that end of the court, if his defense sustains where it is, like, will I watch being like, yep, this is one of their championship solutions? Because if he's not, then I don't know if they're a championship team.
Well, and it needs a solution, right? And that's what we learned in the playoffs last year, is just kind of careening back and forth from how he's used and how he's not used is really going to be disorienting to some extent. And I get it. I get why they did that at times, and they have to at times, have adjustments off of Rudy. But I think the biggest thing is having different ways to use Rudy while he is on the offensive side of the floor. I remember earlier in training camp, I was asking him kind of about this, in the idea that I felt in those last 20 games of the season and in the postseason, that he was more of like a dunker spot offensive rebounding sort of guy, rather than, a pick and roll, more being used as a screener in that way. And he's like, I'm not sure that was true. Well, maybe it wasn't true the final 20 games of the season. I don't remember exactly, but it was for sure the case in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to his credit, to some extent, he dealt with it. He did play lower minutes. He was less used in the offense, more just sitting around the basket. And at times, in Game 5 against the Lakers, when they won that series, it was because he was such a force around the basket as an offensive rebounder, not as a screener. And in the typical helpful Rudy Gobert sort of ways in his Utah days or whatever, right? So my question with this is, I think that's probably the best or like safest way to use him is where you can't put him out in the middle of the floor, where when he catches it, or if he catches it, he's going to be problematic, or could be problematic. But I wonder about his willingness to just sit there. You know what I mean? And while he did it during the playoffs, what does that look like over 82 games? And for him, what does that feel like if you're feeling marginalized over the course of the season in a very specific sort of way offensively? We can make all the cases for why that's helpful. It might be more helpful in the aggregate, but it's the same thing as like Ant's shot selection, or Julius doing this on defense. It's easier said than done to do the most efficient, effective, productive thing. than it is to be cool with doing it for 82 games over the course of the regular season. I'd be the same. We all would be the same way of like, I know I can do more than this, and you're not leaving me space for it. What's that going to go like? What's that mental processing for Rudy going to be? I think it's a totally fair question or thought going into this.
And it's just, that's kind of it for a lot of guys is like, well, do you want to win a high level or do you not? Because like so often the motivation is to get paid or whatever. And Rudy's been paid time and again here. Jaden, we've seen with the offensive stuff, and I think everybody wants to see the offense grow to some degree, but he's obviously been frustrated about it in the past. It's like, but you've been paid. So like, here's what we think is best for us winning. Can you buy into that? And then we'll try to find you other stuff on the margins or whatever, or as things develop. I agree with you on the whole Rudy thing, but at some point it's got to be like, well, here's what you're going to do if we're going to win a championship. Right. And that is going to be what defines you as a player. Like whether you win a championship or you never won one. Especially for you specifically, it's going to be how you are looked at. I think how you are remembered. If they never win, if Rudy Gobert never wins the championship, that label is always going to stick there of like, yeah, solid regular season player, like good defensive player, not that much help in the playoffs. Like regardless of how he wins it, the role he has in it, if he wins one, that will all kind of go away. So I think it's just like if you say, hey, this is if you just do this all year to where you're really good at it, there's not really an answer for it. If teams go away from you, like now you're just left on the offensive glass by yourself, which is what happened in that game 5 against the Lakers. Like they didn't pay any attention, but even if the Wolves just shot the ball, he was uncontested for a rebound. That kind of stuff. I think that it's to the point where it's like, okay, you lost in the West Finals 2 years in a row for everybody on this team. Like, do you actually want to take the next step? Do you want to take that final step? Do you really want to make a run at it or not? Because we've seen what kind of trying to appease everybody. That's what the ceiling gets to right here. I'm interested to see it because I agree that it's part of the team committing, I think, to Rudy in that I don't think they did in the Oklahoma City series. I think they were already like, nope, we've seen the playoffs better against the Lakers and Warriors to trot out the smaller offensive unit. And they were just like committed to that at that point, and it went terribly against Oklahoma City.
Right.
And so I think it's committing to Rudy, but it's also is Rudy committing to the things that actually make him the best option. And what's been interesting in the preseason is like, yeah, we're seeing Ant feeding Rudy more, whatnot. But I will say that I don't put any stock in anything. I watched back last year's. I was like, what was Ant doing in last year's preseason? And there were 2 assists against the Bulls in last year's preseason where he operated out of a post up and had 2 assists out of it. Did you see that last year during the regular season? Because I certainly didn't. I just don't think that much translates. If it is any building blocks, then that's great. But that's always going to be, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. The first 2 rounds, I wonder if that played as a little bit of bait in like Finch's mind too of, okay, this did work really well playing smaller, leaning into Julius a little bit more in those 2 matchups when they had these big advantages. I wonder if that's what the conference finals looks like for Rudy specifically. You know what I'm talking about? If it's if it's different, and then whatever you call it, the Toronto thing too, the Julius and Rudy thing back at the beginning of the season. What happens to Rudy mentally when it's not working for a period of time? Because he's smart, but when frustration creeps in, things break down as the Toronto piece did. And he has a hard job of like, it's like an offensive lineman, you know, it's like the same thing over and over again. It really is. Okay, let's keep moving here. The first one I wrote down, and this is a little bit thinking about Portland, who I think is going to be a very good defensive team this season.
Really good.
And I just wrote down, how are the Wolves? A thought I have is, how are the Wolves going to fare against elite defenses this season? And I think this plays into Ant's development so much in that when he's been slowed down earlier in his career, regular season games, it is the teams that have, I think, first and foremost, an elite shot blocker at the rim, so as to force Ant into like some sort of finishing package rather than just like a dunk or a layup or whatever, a clean finish. But the hardest teams are the ones that provide resistance to him on the perimeter and have that rim protector at the rim. Because if he has no perimeter resistance, it's like 1-2 go. Okay, then that's a dunk.
Easy reads at least. You get to the big guy. Yeah,
that's easy, you know, for him. But with a Portland, for example, if you got a Drew Holiday or Tamani Kamara on him on the perimeter, plus you have Klingon at the rim, how do you function against that? How do you find efficient, consistent offense? How do you not get frustrated if you're Ant there? And frankly, like, I do see this as like an area where Ant could evolve and has more answers in his bag for these sort of things. I think this is a place where the addition of the mid-range stuff and just a greater comfort and improved footwork and all those sort of things in there, operating in that in-between area, which you sometimes have to if you're guarded by Tamani Kamara and you got Klingon at the rim. But I don't know. I think Ant might be good there, but what about Julius against elite defenses? Because I saw him, bust bad defenses to a really high level in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and really the end of the season. But what does it look like when he's playing, being guarded by Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, those type of guys? What does this team do against
Drew Holiday?
Elite defenses? Yeah, Drew Holiday, whatever. It's that's been the offensive kryptonite for Ant, and I would say for the last couple years, and then was clearly this team's kryptonite in the playoffs last year against Oklahoma City. Slightly different types of defenses, but really good defenses have historically, to me, really dysregulated the Wolves' offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's always been one of those where we can like point at the matchups and go, they're going to struggle offensively here.
Yeah.
Or this team has nothing for them. Or like Denver, don't worry about that. There's nobody at the rim. So like Denver's going to have to outscore Minnesota.
Yeah.
Those types of things. And you can point out, Dallas in the West Finals last year, like 2 really good guys at the rim. And we're able to, yes, there were some options to defend Ant, but it wasn't like the perimeter guys even. Derek Jones was like, okay, he's okay. And then you have like great options behind. So like if you can provide some resistance so that it's not a free run, then Ant's getting in there and kind of into no man's land, and maybe some tough kickouts where it's like that maybe wasn't quite the right read, or a lot of pressure then on the perimeter shooters. I agree with you. Like these have always been the matchups where it's like, I think they'll lose that game. I think they'll lose to that team, or they'll have to win really ugly. And I think if you can win ugly, that's fine. But yeah, like there's being a top 5 offense, and then there's being an offense that can score against anybody. And right now there will require a development improvement from Ant, from probably everybody, from Julius. Like there's absolutely going to be teams where it's like they are devoting so many resources to Ant that Julius has to win this one-on-one matchup. That is maybe still a tough matchup. But you're
against elite defenses, yes.
2 or 3. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like the ones that matter, like there's one thing where you can be like, well, 35 against the Kings, cool. But what can you do against the elite defenses that you're more likely to run into in the final end stages of the playoffs? And Portland is a really good thing of that. Portland's probably going to be terrible offensively, but Portland is going to be incredibly good defensively this year. I mean, I don't know if Randall's going to face Holiday or Abdija. Like, I don't know. But whoever it is, it's going to be a solid defensive
It's not
player.
going to be an advantage situation.
Right. Also, where, yes, where Klingon is there for Ant, but he's also there for Randall at the rim. And so maybe that is something where it's like, is Rudy on the court? Or are you using Rudy to your advantage? Like that's a pretty
which goes back to the whole other thing of like, we're like, oh, you got to use Rudy. But if that's what it is, and now Julius is now forced to drop it off to Rudy under the basket. Now Klingon's come back over his pump fake. That's not. I think this is what we're talking about.
That's where Portland. Yeah, and that's where Portland then is a matchup where you're like, well, we probably can go small because even with our lesser defensive units, that offense isn't going to be great. But is that a solution then when you face a really great team? It's the toggling back and forth where it's like we can never really establish ourselves. We're establishing enough to win on a night-to-night basis, but who are we? We're just like Finch called it 2 years ago, like a chameleon. That's a strength, but it's usually not the team that probably like wins the title. So yeah, I'm with you. Like it's really good defenses. How do you beat it? Do you feel good about the way you can beat it? Because it has been a major stopping point for them in the past. And I can't always even say that I'm like, here's what you have to do. We've barely seen anything work. So I don't really have that many ideas.
I do go back to the dominance of the advantage situations by Julius in the playoffs. And I remember thinking about it, talking about it at the time of like, well, this wasn't a very scripted team during the regular season, that I don't feel like they were a matchup advantage attacking team. They were
only when
more
I
of a
think
free flowing.
I mean, it was when you could see when Julius had like a
Just
guy where it's
Julius.
like he can't guard him. Yeah, that was the only
Mhm.
one I would say, and really nobody else.
And again, I don't know if this is helpful or hurtful in the grand scheme of things, but I'm curious to see if I get a month into the season and I go, oh yeah, the Wolves offensively are a team that picks at scabs a little bit more, of like this is a spot like we're going at over and over again, because I wouldn't have defined last season's team during the regular season as that. And I don't know if that's a good idea in the grand scheme of things. Does that bog you down? Are you playing in the half court more? Have you now depressed your overall offensive efficiency? I don't know.
I mean, that's what Boston does, right? Or Boston did. And you can say Boston eventually won the title, and that is the grand scheme of things. Do you feel like they got enough out of, I don't know if one title, yeah, it's always like is winning something is better than winning nothing, but the way they attacked things for years, I would say they kind of underachieved for the talented roster that they had. I feel like so often they fell short in disappointing fashion. They finally got one, but if you are being honest, like that run was did kind of face a bunch of injured teams, and then you got to the finals. Like, I mean, I know you did your route and you got there and you won it, but yeah, that's what they did, and it was like the time they finally won it was when they were never pressed by anybody. There was never like fourth quarter, what do we do here? Like, unless he was like the severely hurt Indiana Pacers, like that. That to me is like, I don't know if that's a championship strategy either, because they did kind of wilt away at the end so often. So yeah, I'm with you.
They were obsessed with generating 40% threes.
Yeah.
And we're really good at it, but it was so streamlined. It was that, and I wonder, it's the same thing with the Wolves. Is it's like, okay, with Julius or Ant or whatever, if you're obsessed with creating like 60% twos, which I think you can generate with Ant and Julius, I think they're that type of player, but it's just the philosophical question of like, are we just playing good offense or are we trying to like find a hack? And I think that's what Boston did. And for that season, absolutely did really, really well. But it does draw into question like the consistency of it or how sustainable those things are, especially once they sort of get a little bit more scouted out and teams know that's what you're going to be doing. It's just an interesting time in the NBA right now. Today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino, and I have a new Treasure Island note for you this week. Dane Cook is going to be at TI on October 24th for a show that starts at 7 p.m. The Wolves do play that evening, but it's against the Lakers, the second game of the season. So it's not until 9 p.m. for tip-off for the Wolves game. So you could make a whole night out of it. Little Dane Cook, see him perform at 7 o'clock and then walk over to the Parlay Lounge, which I'm always telling you about at TI for Wolves games or Vikings games or whatever. And yeah, make a whole night out of it. Dane Cook, Wolves, Lakers. That sounds awesome. Visit TICasino.com to purchase tickets for Dane Cook. And also don't forget that there are Vikings watch parties every Sunday in the Parlay Lounge at Treasure Island with drink specials and prize giveaways. We would love it if you make Treasure Island your home turf for every Vikings game this season. And again, visit TICasino.com for more information. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and time is literally running out to get your season-long NBA Prize Picks in. I've mentioned this before, but how season-long Prize Picks works is you take more or less on what a player is going to average. I've said that Ants are at 27.8 points, 5.6 rebounds, 4.8 assists, and 3.7 made threes per game. But there is another one on there, more or less than 0.5 50-point games for Anthony Edwards. All right, so does he score 50 points in a game this season? If you take more than on that, he gets 50. Okay, that's taken care of. And there is also a Steph Curry free square for opening night up there if Steph Curry scores 1 point. So you can make a lineup, I just did it, where you take Anthony Edwards to score 50 points in a game this season and Steph Curry to score 1 point on opening night. And if both of those things happen, you get 3-1 on your pick. So I think that's a pretty good one. I think it's a fun way to get it going. And obviously it's Ant too. So we'll all kind of have that. If Ant scores 50, there we go. That's should be a win. Always something going on over at Prize Picks. As a reminder to put together a lineup at Prize Picks, all you need to do is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. If you don't have a Prize Picks account, use that promo code Dane if you're going to use it this season, because when you sign up using promo code Dane, you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. using promo code Dane with that sort of stuff.
I mean, the 3-point shot in the playoffs is difficult. I mean, we can all date back to Houston going like the 0 for 27 or whatever. But then like Boston, even the year they won the title, like I'd listen to Bill Simmons the next day and I'd be like, I'm still waiting for that game where they hit 45% from three.
Yeah.
It never came. It doesn't come. Like Oklahoma City did not win because like their 3-point shooting dried up last year in the playoffs. Like Naz and Donte, as the playoffs went up, their 3-point shooting dried up. It's a tough thing to do, to rely on the three ball in the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, you can say like, well, yeah, you just drive in there and then you kick and then these guys hit shots and maybe they do at certain points of the year. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't have a great answer. I know this isn't even a great conversation because we don't have an answer, but I'm with you that like good defense take things away. What's your answer? And that's why I always constantly think that they just have to play better defense than somebody else.
Yeah, right. Just careen that sort of direction because it's
But I think as a team, they're drifting the other direction. I really have felt like they're slowly drifting the other way. Just like in terms of build, in terms of what they decide to go to. So that's where I'll be interested to see, okay, you're drifting in that direction, seemingly not with your words, but with your actions. Are you going to have positives of that where you are better suited to beat good defenses? Where in my mind, I would have been like, just try to be even better defensively than those teams and see if Ant scores enough, Julie scores enough. It made even bad offense, but with really good defense on the other end to get it done. But I think they're going the other way. So then you better find solutions offensively to beat those good defenses.
And I would co-sign that drift too. That's the sense I get from being around the team for the last month and watching and doing those sort of things. And again, I don't know if that's necessarily right. We're relying on our prior of 2 years ago of how good that team was with elite defense. But I also kind of acknowledge they don't have that personnel anymore. So is the drift even wrong? It's my inclination to say, I mean, keep prioritizing it, but it's
right. Yeah, and you could say, but part of that, when you say they don't have the personnel, like who makes those decisions of personnel? Like, like we can, like who drafted Rob? I mean, that's part, that's a part of the decision is that's drifting that way just with the selection, so that's all part of the organization, I think, going that way in my mind.
Yeah. And then obviously losing Nikhil, losing Kyle Anderson to free agency, you just kind of getting priced out of guys as
but you can keep trying to replace with different players who fit that same mold, and they haven't really done it. Would be my own.
As we talked about for an hour on the last episode.
Yes, totally.
With Jaylen Clark.
My next thought is that I think just looking at that schedule to start the year, I think we're going to know if this team has like a high ceiling or not. And I don't always think this is true of every team. Like last year's team, I certainly was willing to give them grace deep into the season because it's like, these new players, like it's going to take some time. We've seen this with trades before. But this year, the whole thing is about continuity. And even the people you did lose, like Nikhil, you're backfilling with guys who've been on the roster. And with a soft schedule and continuity, you should be able to come out and impose the things that you've been working on and the things that you want to be, because there shouldn't be that much resistance on it. And you should have had quite a bit of buildup having a full offseason with this team that I think like if they come out of the gates and they're like 10-7, I'm going to be like, I don't know how good they are. Not to say they won't be like a playoff team, but I don't see like a real high end ceiling here.
You said ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I think it's going to be like 13-4, 14-3, like pretty dominant basketball. Not like, oh, wow, they pulled out another one last night. Like imposing themselves. We're a really good team. We're going to show that on a nightly basis against teams that we frankly should show it against. So I think we're going to have a good idea of 15 to 20 games into the season of like, is this team like one of the very best teams in the West, or is it like a playoff team and maybe they can finish fourth and get home court?
I was reading your thing this morning too, and maybe you can remember this more than I can from reading it because you wrote it, but go through what some of the early season schedule is from I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I just remember that, the first 5 games you have the Lakers twice without LeBron, and I get Luka's still there. Like you could lose that game. I think Indiana without McConnell is pretty favorable. Portland, we'll see. They don't have Scoot. I don't know how much Scoot matters. Probably just some offensive structure. But those are the first 5 games, and those are the 5 where you could go, okay, you could lose a couple of those games. I don't think you do. I don't think you lose more than one, frankly, if you're like a really good team. But you could lose a couple, and then it gets into just in their first 17 games. They play Sacramento 3 times. They play Charlotte. They play Brooklyn. And I think they play Phoenix. And those are all expected to be terrible teams. I mean, like Like I think like Vegas over under total is like 35 or less.
Well,
in
and
that
even
group.
Portland would fall in that too. I think Portland's
Portland
like
would too. I think
33.5 or something like
yeah, right in that range. Yeah, so it's a lot. So right there, if you just go the Sacramento, the Charlotte, Brooklyn, Phoenix, Portland, that's 7 of your first 17.
that.
That
And
you would
2
think
no
are
LeBrons.
yeah, the 2 LeBrons on top of it. I do think McConnell's probably going to be a big thing for the Pacers, even though I know he's reserve. Anyway, just so many winnable games. And even the other ones you're looking and you're like, okay, that's not like a guaranteed loss by any stretch. So that's why I think if you are dropping like 7 of the first 17, then I think you haven't come out of the gates on fire, which the continuity thing would suggest you should. Do you really need another season to work through things and find yourself? Because at that point, you're like, are there solutions here? Is this? I just think we're going to know very early because Finch has liked their camp. They've liked the practice. They feel good about who they are. So that should lead to some early, really good results.
And we both feel like it will lead to good results.
That's my prediction that it will.
It would be good there. I do go back to, in my mind, doing stuff the first couple weeks of the season, and for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been a line from Finch when we talked to him after the first couple of games of like, preseason. Once preseason ended, we stopped passing the ball. You know, are you going to have the awareness? Are you going to be able to rely on the continuity enough, or just feel safe enough in the continuity to not need to get yours, you know, and know that if you're Julius Randle, you don't need to force anything because you're going to get opportunities throughout this game. Like you just are. Chris Finch is going to put you in position to get opportunities. Anthony Edwards too. I'm sure on opening night, he's going to want to come out and like get his 40 or whatever, but can you, which he could probably even do within the flow of the whole thing, but can you keep the more of the long-term view? Can you remember what just happened, what you just were trying to establish in training camp, and apply it immediately? A staple of these Finch Ant teams is they do not apply it immediately. The one year they did apply it immediately was the year that they had continuity 2 years ago, and they that was that season, right? They started 17-4, 16-4.
Yeah.
Something like that. So
20-5 eventually. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I would bet that will happen, but there's 5 seeds of doubt, you know, surrounding that as well. And whether or not they will show that ceiling, I do kind of agree. If they don't, I'm going to be skeptical come Thanksgiving or whatever it is, you know, of 12-8 or something like that. Feels like it should be more than that. Was the continuity. Why isn't it? You know, why isn't more than that? It'll detract from, I would agree with that, detract from my total sum.
I would say like the start too, like, I mean, regular season dominant. I always view everything through like, can they contend for a title or not? I think a team that gets to the West Finals 2 years in a row, it'd be silly to not. Regular season, like positioning matters. And they always talk about like home court in the first round or whatever. And I know last year there were 6 that still made it to the West Finals, but it's 4 years in a row now where the team that won the title did not start a series on the road. Like they had home court throughout. Even the Warriors team that won as like a 3 seed had the home court. So like, I think it really matters how you position yourself. And mostly like establishing habits. I really think that you talk about getting hot late in the year, but like the team that wins is the ones that's like, they know who they are. They know what they're going to do on a night to night basis. Like, and so if you're not doing that early in the year, even if you find something late in the year, like last year's team found something late in the year or at least found wins. And I just don't know if that's enough to get through the grind that is 2 months against a bunch of really good teams in the playoffs. So that's why I think it matters. Like they can start 12-8 and I won't be like, well, they're going to miss the playoffs.
No, that's
true. You know,
ceiling. Yes.
Yeah. It's just, does it feel like you're really building towards something special? And that's what I want to see.
Another thought I had is kind of simple. Is there another level to Naz? I don't feel like we've talked about that much. I think we look at the 96 minutes of big man stuff and we're like, okay, that's Rudy, Julius, and Naz, and that's what's available. Maybe he'll play a little bit of small forward. And I feel like that's always been like the trapdoor. I've talked about it. It's like I've thought it was the trapdoor of like more Naz. He played like 13 minutes or something at small forward last season. I don't think that's in fact going to be the trap, or I don't know. I struggle to believe that that's going to be this trapdoor that opens up something much more for him. But I do kind of feel like Naz is going to be better this year. I do feel like there is actually another level there. And maybe it's hard for me to define that. Maybe it's just consistency. Maybe it's being a little sharper, cutting out some of the stuff that hurts Naz is the chaos, right? It's the turnovers, it's the bad decisions, it's the okay, great, you're a quick decision maker, but did we make a quick decision or did we make a good decision?
You just shoot those 30 feet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And maybe it is just that. Maybe it's finding that. I would skew towards yes. I think there is another level for Naz. I think this will be his best season. I do, but I run into the conundrum of like where, or how exactly does it show up? What do you think about that one?
I think what you mentioned is 100% right. Like it's almost like coach speak, but I think it's so true. Of Naz, like at his best, is really good, and it's just every like third game, you're like, oh my god, this is terrible. Like terrible decision making, defensively just not attentive, like coming over like 2 seconds late in a rotation, jumping 5 feet sideways, but your arms are straight up, so you're confused why it was a foul. Like those types of things, like just the attention to detail, like defense. Okay, I got to be here so I can get here fast enough. Offensively, like I'm going to be in a good spot on the floor. So if it is a catch and shoot, I really like it. If it's not, I mean, they're going to put the ball down twice and decide where I'm going from there. But just like, or maybe I'm just going to keep it moving. Even if I haven't shot in a couple possessions, maybe I'm just going to make the next pass to the corner. It's just like, he's so skilled. And I just think, and last year was a contract year too for him. So like, I understand that aspect of it of, I want to score. I want to do this. I want to build upon the 6th man of the year thing and try to ascend still. But it's like, just be the best version of you on a night to night basis. And now that you have the financial security to do so, I think that would be, if he did that every night, if he was his best version, he's grabbing a few more rebounds, like, and just defensively just being tighter, and shot selection a little bit better. Like he can look like the best player on the court sometimes, and so it's just more of that. Yeah. And then I think you'd really like it. I think he probably gets in his mind of like whatever game that was, like Portland or Washington or something, where it's like, oh my God, look at that. He's bringing the ball up the court and then he's hitting a step back 3. And he's probably like, I want to do more of that. It's like, you would do that on a team that won like 40 games. But like you can be a really good contributing player, like a high end, like, oh my God, that's a guy you want on your team. And that's somebody else is going to be like, that could be our second best player by just doing the things you're good at well, night to night basis.
It reminds me of Cat.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah,
like, I'm not to say they're the same player exactly, but there was a chaos to Cat that made him not quite as good as his numbers suggested he was, and I think there's an element of that can be true with Naz as well. And this is like way too much like armchair psychologist. I think for both of them, it comes from a place of like feeling disrespected, or not appreciated. And I would point to the struggle both of them have with refs, of like not, and some of it is just going crazy in your head during the game. I think with both of them, I think at the core of that is not feeling like they are given the respect for the caliber of player that they think they are. And frankly, maybe are closer to that than they, then it feels like their perception is, and that can be, it was a snowball rolling down the hill with Cat, and it was something I talked about with Cat all of the time. And now that Naz is at this level, a $20-25 million a year player, the same expectation that I think we put on Cat, or the kind of holding it to him of like, it isn't okay for you to lose your mind, Cat, for a 5-minute stretch here. You're too important to the team. And if you do that, this team is going to be hurt by it. And I think Naz needs to, hold himself to that standard too, or it's a prerequisite to another level, being the fun player, being the dynamic player, but being more of a consistent player, not just from a production standpoint, but from like a a mentality standpoint. I think Naz gets himself in a little bit of trouble there sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that's it's always trying to do more, and it's always like trying to just the decision making, and it's clearly is like motivated of I need to do something here. Like it's like the shots.
And he's right. He does.
Yeah, right. But it's like do what you're supposed to do there, and like your gravity, who you are, whatever. Like it's either going to lead to something easier for you, or it's going to open up something for somebody else. And I just think like I haven't shot in a while. I'm a good 3-point shooter. We need a bucket here. I'm going to put this one up. The number of shots we saw of that last year was like, looks great when they go in, but man, it just really gets things going even further in the wrong direction when they don't. It's probably going transition the other way, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's just he is the biggest one where I think you can just put consistency by his name as like the biggest area of growth this year. Like you could say that for anybody, but I really think for him that's the most standout. Of just do what you're good at, night to night basis, and you will be like, "Well, I'm having a great season." Like I mean, and everybody will say it. You know, like, because right now it is like if you watch the Wolves every night, it's like you might love Naz, but you're like, oh, this is a bad Naz night, you know. And if you can kind of erase those or limit them as much as possible, that's a huge leap.
Which I think is kind of a staple of elite six men is consistency.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the hardest things about being a really good six man is it's like being it seems really difficult to be like an elite pinch hitter in baseball, you know, like can you be really consistent within that role? And maybe that goes into like Finch of like the more maybe consistent opportunities you give Naz and maybe in consistency of role, maybe that irons out some of the stuff because there has been a chaos sort of surrounding what Naz's role, this guy. And whenever we talk to him about like what changes this year, he goes, well, I do everything. Well, yeah, you do everything because that's been your way onto the floor. You like earned that. Maybe it's time to get a little bit more specific, you know, and just have it be a little bit more defined. Give me another.
That's totally okay. That's just less. It's chicken or egg on that one, right? Like if he is more consistent, I bet he gets a bigger role. But if he has a bigger role, maybe he gets more consistent. I don't know. Yeah, I think for me, it's a big thing of the things that they've emphasized throughout camp, and they have looked good in the preseason. But I'm just skeptical, and I just want to know like, can you do things? Can you be coached into things that maybe aren't necessarily who you've always been as players? Like these guys just aren't like transition. I want to see like throughout the year, like, is it actually like a part of their offense? Because I've seen it here in a few games, like, and it's cool when you have 3 training camp practices to emphasize it again and again and again. And then you can go play the next, and then you can get up and down on the court, ugly or not, like you're doing it. And that's how you grow. But okay, now there's no practice between 2 games. That second game, are you still getting out in transition? Even if it really isn't who you've always been as players? Like, Ant, is he going to be like every night I come out in transition? If it's not being drilled in his head, is Rudy going to do all that stuff? Is Julius going to, everybody on the court? Like, and the same thing with defensive ball pressure, where I just don't think it's some of their thing. It's not like who they've always been as players. And they're trying to like coach it into them to get like that 5 to 10% better to help them raise their level as a team. But I don't know if that's who any of these guys are as players, of like that's instinctually what they do. So I'm curious to see if training camp lessons can take hold and hold on throughout the course of a regular season, where we can be like, that's what the Timberwolves do. I don't know. We'll see.
Today's show is brought to you by Skims. You know about Skims. They have an expansive lineup in women's clothing, but they really have expanded their product to the men's side of things, specifically men's underwear. And I've said this before, but my favorite thing about Skims is that it's a type of boxer brief that both works for going to the gym and just everyday life. I have the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and they work functionally just like compression shorts I would wear back in the day playing basketball or for running, but they are significantly more comfortable. I would never have worn compression shorts just around the house at home. And that is what's unique about these Skims ones. You can wear one pair to the gym and another pair afterwards at home because they are built for both. Like I said, I have the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and those are my personal favorite, but they also have cotton briefs amongst other styles. And I think you should try and find a pair that works for you. Be more comfortable. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com and Skims stores, and let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Today's show is brought to you by Factor. And when fall comes around in our household, we start doing Factor, because with a busier routine in the fall and going to games a lot of nights, finding time to cook can be tough. And that's why I love Factor. Their chef-prepped dietitian approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious no matter how hectic the season gets. Factor has more variety and more meals than they ever have before. You can choose from a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp at no extra cost. From more choices to better nutrition, that's why 97% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier life. And you can feel the difference no matter your routine. I really do use this myself, and I think you should too. Eat smart at factormeals.com/DaneMoore50 off and use code DaneMoore50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code DaneMoore50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. You can find that URL and code in the show notes. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Yeah, it could.
It might.
You know, I'm not super buying into the idea that the transition emphasis shows up. I do kind of think about it that emphasis is showing up in pieces because they have worked on it in practice, like you were just saying. It's like when they had like a whole week off before they played the Phoenix Suns after
right. Yes, that's been
lost
huge for them in the playoffs.
Right?
You know?
Like when they have practice and they can really work on something, they do it. That is Finch coaches it up. The players, I think, starting at the top with Ant, go, okay, we do have a game plan. We need to do this. I will buy into doing the game plan. You don't have that time during the regular season to be able to do that. So it then does need to be in your identity. I know people don't like that, like when we talk about identity and stuff all the time, but what I think I'm trying to say there is it's like what things have like seeped into who you are and you're now doing them
second nature, you know?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. And with another year of age and maturity from Ant specifically, but also Jaden and Naz and some of those other on the younger side of their career guys, what if even one of them moves into being an extremely consistent player? What if even one of them totally allows this to like be something that they embrace and is their identity? I think there's huge power in that. Like, because if Ant is doing it consistently, it will permeate.
Yes.
You know?
Because who's getting the ball?
Even Naz and Jaden some.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Ant more, right? Because Ant's
For
the one who's like, transition, oh, I'm going to get out and run. Guess if Ant's running up the court, Ant's going to get the ball. Or if Ant gets like the outlet or gets the rebound and pushes it, then everybody else is going to run too. Like, it can be Jaden and you can be like, I ran the court, nobody hit it ahead to me. Because Ant got the ball and just started kind of walking it up, you know, and then guess what? I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah, I agree that Ant can be kind of a true driver of change, maybe obviously more so than anybody else on the team. So his development is pretty pinnacle.
That one play, I think it was the New York game, where like was kind of a dress rehearsal for the Wolves, and Julius got a defensive rebound and was looking for Ant with the hit ahead pass. Do you remember this? And Ant wasn't turned for it.
Yeah.
So it's Julius is going up the left side of the floor, and Ant was looking for it. So Julius just like went down. I don't know if he got a foul or like the defense tipped it out, and it stayed the Wolves' ball. So Julius wasn't like upset about it. He was kind of like smiley smirking at Ant. He was like, "Are we going to do this?" And I couldn't see what Ant's reaction was to there, but I do think that's important. And even if it's Julius, does he embrace this a little bit more? Is this his biggest transition season? I think he can move the needle and have some influence in that way too, but it does probably need to be, you know, more than one or two guys. It does need to be some of the identity.
Well, that's how, like, if it's everybody, then you can play transition with the pass, and that's the best transition. And so much of the Timberwolves,
it's not going to be everybody. It's not going to be everybody, right?
I'm saying if it's 3 or 4 people on the court, like I don't care if Rudy's trailing behind or whatever. Like you need at least 3 people to be like, okay, I'm thinking about the hit ahead pass, and 2 people are be like, I'm thinking about getting the hit ahead pass. Because so much of right now, I think, still in the minds of the Wolves is like transition. Yep. That means me getting the ball and dribbling at the defense as hard as I can and seeing if there's an advantage for me doing it. Or like I get to like the 3-point line and I make a pass. It's like, I just don't see, I need to see more and more to believe of like, I get the ball, I take like one dribble and I'm looking up the court. Who's already up at half court here that I can hit up to, and then they can take one-on-one. They're one guy who's back. Like, that's the best transition. That's the Pacers transition. Like,
Right.
can the Wolves commit to that? Because I mean, I agree. Even still, like just being more aggressive about seeing if like dribbling up the court and advantages are there. That's growth. But if you want to like be good at it with frankly less effort, like that's how you do it. And I think that's probably what they're coaching on. It's just how much can you execute that, and that's what's going to unlock like a Jaden. That's the other stuff is like, yeah, maybe Ant can find 2 more buckets. Maybe Julius can find 2 more buckets. You know, if they're getting the rebound and pushing it hard, and maybe they're getting to the free throw line or whatever. But if you want to be like a team where it's like, no, we actually really get some easy offense in transition. It is like looking ahead of like, are these guys running? Are we getting it out there? Are they then getting going when maybe they don't always get going in our half court sets? Like that's how I think you get better as an offense and even beat teams that have good defenses.
My I guess kind of last one is about Donte DiVincenzo. And I was thinking about whatever preseason, but like Donte was the best player on the Wolves during preseason last season. He was also had a great stretch for a couple weeks right before he got the turf toe injury. And a thought for me is, what if we get one of those DiVincenzo stretches right away to start the season? I feel like we've all kind of baked in this expectation of DiVincenzo of like, yeah, he's good, but there's a volatility to it. And we all go, well, you know, it is just shooters are volatile, or like this type of player is volatile. What if he's not? Because I don't think it needs to be a volatile player. I'm not sure that's just like a truth about Donte DiVincenzo. I think we could go be 3 weeks into this season and be like, yeah, Dante's like been the best player, you know, or like leading the team. And obviously Ant's going to be the best player, but one of the very best players on this team. And my thought is like, what are the ripple effects of that? One, how much does that just help you win and have this good start to the season? All the showcasing your ceiling, all the things we're talking about there. But 2, does it lead you to make some sort of change and go away from Conley or something like that? If while Donte is proving to be this, Mike Conley isn't showing to be what you and I both think he is going to be at the beginning of the season. I'm curious of the externalities of Donte DiVincenzo playing really well and doing so not once every 3 nights, but 3 out of every 4 nights or something like that. What does that change?
I feel like he would be a lot less volatile if they didn't have him dribbling the ball up the court. Like, I know he can do it, but I don't think, I mean, he should be the guy trying to run down the court. And then he's maybe coming in off like a dribble handoff action where he starts in the corner, things like that. Like, I just feel like if he is bringing the ball up the court and like kind of having to get things set up there and running off of that, like now nothing he does is happening until there's at least like 12 seconds left in the shot clock. And he seems to like operate so much better in transition in general, but that's not necessarily him dribbling the ball up the court and just shooting, which happened a few times last year. I think more consistency of role makes sense for him. So it's like, maybe if it's him and Ant, maybe Ant's always bringing it up, like that kind of stuff, or Julius is always bringing it up. If like a Mike's not on the court when Dante's on the court, or Robert, whatever you decide on, not Donte ever. So he's doing kind of the same things again and again. And he's getting his offense pretty consistently in the same ways again and again. I just kind of feel like that's the most consistent version of him. But I agree that like that player in New York was fantastic. Like, really a high level player, high level in the playoffs, all of it. Like, and so fun to watch, and effective, and just like drove a lot of their offense alongside Brunson. And we only got that in the smallest of spurts last year. Otherwise, it just felt like it's weird in that it's kind of like when you watched him in New York, it was like, oh, this is like a Robin next to a Batman or something. And in Minnesota, it's just an ancillary piece. So are you going to get the best version of him if it always just feels like he's just another guy out there? Like, that's,
I think it can happen. I don't think there's like a stylistic fit issue. Sometimes you would say like, oh, for an elite shooter, the best type of offense for them to be in is a spread pick and roll sort of offense. And they're getting tons of sort of like scripted catch and shoot threes, right? I don't feel like Donte is like, obviously he would be really good at that. I don't feel like that's the only style of offense that he's really effective with. So I don't think the Wolves are going to all of a sudden become more of a spread pick and roll team, even though I have Rudy Gobert, and I think there would be positives to that. I think it's just antithetical to Finch and frankly kind of Ant's style preferences. But I do still think Donte DiVincenzo fits that a free-flowing offense style just as well as he would being, in a more stationary type spot. And that's what the Knicks were too. The Knicks were not, that was not, it was isolation. Brunson was kind of like Ant. Like, I do think there is tons of signals that Donte DiVincenzo can do what he did in that final year in New York with this Timberwolves team. We just didn't see them. We really saw it in the preseason, and then not the first month. Then he got in rhythm. Then he got hurt, and then it was come and go the rest of the way.
Yeah.
It was
like mid-December to mid-January was great, and it was like one of his best games was they lost to Memphis, but he got hurt at the very end of that game, and then that was it. That was like his second straight like, oh wow, performance. I just think he's got to be more of like, I think it's got to be more of an emphasis of what they're trying to do in the offense. Like, what are ways we get to Donte? And I haven't heard that mentioned that much. And we don't ask about it, frankly. And I think it's because he is like guy 7 or whatever. And so like the easy questions are always Julius and Ant and even Rudy or whatever. But it just, his name has not been brought up that much offensively. But I frankly think like, yes, he can defend. He'll try on that end. I don't think he's a defensive plus. So I think offensively, like he should be kind of like, he's out there for a reason. So what are the different ways? Maybe it is like he's over on the side, but like we're getting the ball to him and maybe he's running like side pick and rolls, which turn into pick and pops or whatever, making one read out of it where it's like, he's not directing the offense, but he can play make more in that secondary role. How often can you get to that? Like that type of stuff. Are you running sets that maybe help you get there? Or at least like pushing in the idea. Like I think they've got to get more offensively out of him because, and maybe that is again part of like veering more towards offense. I think if Donte's out there, you're inherently veering a little bit more towards offense, but so lean into that. He can't just be a guy where it's like, yeah, he played 22 minutes and he went 3 for 7 or whatever. Like, I don't really see the whole benefit of that. It's just,
you remember how Finch said like incorporating Julius Randle in the first couple months of the season sort of like halted the giving Jaden more offensive opportunities idea and like playing with the ball in his hands more because they were so focused on making the Julius Randle thing work. I feel like we agree with we all could see that Jaden really struggled at the beginning of the season, but we never do that with Donte from last year because Donte played with Julius in New York and they're familiar with each other. But if they could go a little bit away from the like obsessively trying to make Julius Randle work, which I think they can because you now know how to make Julius Randle work, Finch can breathe a little bit more air into Jaden, which he talks about all the time and that. But I think Donte is one of those too of like, well, rather than us being obsessed over finding a way for Julius to have 18 points and 9 assists, what if we just kind of know that's going to organically show up and script a little bit more for Donte DiVincenzo? Because I think this team needs more scripted plays, especially when we talk about the lack of ball handling and stuff like that. And you have a weapon in Donte DiVincenzo that you don't have to run like a special sort of play to free him on a pin down for a 3 pretty much whenever you want, just a little bit more intention his way, I think could lead to this as well.
Yeah. And it would help if I agree that structure is kind of a way out of this, but like, that's another thing for Ant of like, we talk about all these things that he wants to get better at and whatnot, but like, if you hijack fewer possessions, then it's not as urgent of like, okay, now we need to get blank the ball. Okay, how do we get Julius the ball? Because he hasn't touched the ball in 6 possessions here, or whatever. Like you can hijack some for sure. Like you're an elite offensive player. Like especially if you get a rhythm going, like go off. Nobody really has a problem with that. But it's just like maybe not early in the games, or maybe not trying to find your own rhythm in the second quarter. Like can you help the ball flow a little bit more here? Just 10% more. I think that would help this offense a lot of where guys are more naturally getting into it, where it's not just like, well, the only way is in transition for player A, B, and C. So I think that would make a big difference. Like we talk about that, like they're feeding it to Julius. It's like they almost had to do that because otherwise it was just Ant forcing stuff sometimes. I
get why they did that. Yeah. And it worked in the long run. My point is I do think it came at the cost of offense for McDaniels early at the season. It definitely came at a cost for Mike Conley involvement. And I don't think we talk about maybe that was funky. That specifically was funky for DiVincenzo as well. You want to give me your season prediction?
Sure. I put 53 wins, which is high. I think. I mean, it's a few over there, over under. I think they're going to get off to a fast start. And then I think from that point, you can play 10 games over 500 the rest of the way from there and hit right about that number. But I did put also that they will lose in the second round this year and come up one round short of where they've been in past years. I don't necessarily even think that means they're taking like a massive step back. I just think if Oklahoma City and Denver stay healthy, I think those are probably the two best teams. I think it would be a little bit it would be an interesting dialogue around the Wolves if they lost to Denver in the playoffs of like, oh, Denver passed us. How did that happen? And then analyzing the moves from there. But that's where I kind of have it playing out at. I think Denver, Minnesota would be another great series. I just think that Denver has maybe built the best Jokic roster they've ever had. And I just like, it's hard to pick anybody over Jokic, especially if he has like a real proper supporting cast that I think he might have this year, just in terms of fitting who he is. I think the Wolves will be a good team. I do. I don't know if there have been, it's tough for me to say like continuity and when they lost one of their key players. And yes, I think TJ's going to be really good for the Wolves, but of like, where are you guys making a huge leap? And I get it, individual development, all this stuff, but it's hard for me to go, this guy's going to get better. This guy's going to get better. This guy's going to get better. Not saying that for other teams. And here's how the Wolves are going to make a huge jump. Like that's a hard line for me to draw.
It's interesting if they win 53 games and do lose in the second round. Obviously, that will not have been as good of a playoff run as they've made for the past two seasons. But to win 53 games, I think during the regular season, we would go, that was a lot better of a regular season.
Played better basketball
than the season ago was.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't take that to be, if that's true, if that former part of feeling like a noticeably better regular season team than you were a season ago, that's a win to me, even if you do get to the playoffs and you get knocked off by the Thunder or the Nuggets, because at least at this moment, I like to watch the games for a while before I get like too certain of like, Denver, Houston, San Antonio, whatever it's all going to be. It'll be an interesting dialogue. I just want to highlight that if they win 53 games during the regular season, I think we're gonna be like, damn, they were a good regular season team. And it's gonna be more like what we were talking about the team of two years ago. What was that, 57? I went 57
56, I think.
56. Yeah.
You could be right.
Really good team. That was I think it was 56. But I mean, point being, it felt like a really good regular season team that year. I do not think last season's team, we would say, felt like a really good regular season team. So I know it's ultimately about winning the championship.
And I think 53 would still be like 53 in a second round exit would be like working towards something, which is still kind of weird in that, Rudy gets a year older every year and who knows if Mike's even back next year. So there's like a little bit would be a shift, I think, in the offseason either way. So that in that way, it's like this is kind of maybe could be like a final chapter of something. I don't know. But that would be like you built off of and you were a better team. Because last year, they made it to the West Finals. Like they did beat like kind of a remade Lakers roster on the fly and then Golden State without Steph. So like, I don't know if it would be like we were worse in the playoffs because we didn't get as far. I think it could have just been, this path was way harder than last year's.
Yes. Yeah. And, you figure that out when you get there because there is just the random luck factors of like who you play. And it'll be unlucky if they play the Nuggets in the second round, like it could go, or the Thunder, it could go the other direction that way. I struggled with my season prediction because I was thinking about it like in two different ways. If I did 100 predictions for like the season, I was able to
computer simulation. I love it.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think that they would be at 50 wins or like 49, 50, 51 wins many times. I think they'll be, I could see these mid to high 50s seasons. And whether it be injury or just like, things not working, I can see the low 40s sort of things. I feel like there's a lot in those ranges that I could see happening. But then if you averaged it out, if you averaged those 100 out, it would be like 50.2 wins or something like that, So I just started going through and I was like, all right, if I had to bet on this, 47.5, would I take the over? Yes. 48.5, would I take the over? Yes. 49.5, yes. And then I was at like 50.5. And I think that was the last number that I would say if that was the bet and I had to wager on it, that's the highest I would go with taking the over personally. If it was 51.5, I think I would have to
take the under.
Yeah, I think that's the point I would get to. So I guess I'm at 51-31 for the season, and
that would also be a successful regular season.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And then I mean, I guess if I had to pick, that would be the second round in the playoffs thing. I do think those are kind of different things to predict, and we can kind of predict the playoffs. I feel like when we get to the playoffs a little bit, I am excited for us to do this in like a month, and
sure.
and give which ties into the whole good idea of the ceiling thing. Also with us having watched more of the West and stuff, because that's a huge factor in all this. And I know the West is so awesome, and I'm saying that, and I do think the West is so awesome. But then, like,
I predicted every record. I did the thing in today's paper where I predicted every record, and I got through a lot of teams, and I was like, 42 wins, 41 wins. But when you list them all off, you're like, wow, look at how good the West is. And like, I think there's a lot of teams that are going to like right around 500 this year. Like the Spurs, like, they could take a giant leap, but like, I wrote this, I was like, there wasn't a whole ton of proof of concept last year. No, so I don't know, and Dallas, like D'Angelo Russell is going to be their point guard, like, or is it Nembhard? Like, I mean,
there's way more proof of concept in Minnesota than those two.
Yeah, than anywhere else in these places. Like Memphis is banged up. Like, there are these teams where you're like, but those are clearly better than these teams. With who they have. And so that's where I don't think we're going to see like any of these dominant teams like the Lakers and Clippers. Like you look and say the Wolves are better than those teams. And those are the teams where you're most like sure things, but the Wolves will probably be better than them.
It's, I think it's just, we got to see, we got to see some of it. And I think it'd be way more fun if like national NBA podcasts did these 20-25 games into the season of like, now what do you think? Let's reset the win totals when you've actually seen the teams, because how many people are doing those things like actually know who the eighth man is on this team that they're certain is going to hit the over? Like
I had to be looking at the roster every time. Like I was looking through, I was like, who do they have again? Like for sure, you get to the Clippers again, and it's like, that's right, they have like 10 or 11 old guys, but 10 or 11 old guys is maybe enough old guys. Like, where like you can constantly be cycling them in. Like, okay, we're down 3. We still have 8 old guys like that we're kind of confident in. Like, I don't know.
That takes away some floor, right? Like there's not gonna be a bunch of minutes a night of a guy who shouldn't be in the rotate, like isn't an NBA rotation player. Like the Clippers are gonna, and I think the Wolves are too. I think, Rob has to kind of show what he can be if he's in the rotation early on. But like, I feel pretty confident that everybody else who's going to touch the Wolves rotation is a surefire rotation player. I would say that about Terrence Shannon Jr. for sure. The first top 7 guys. And I think as we start looking around the league and stuff like that, you're going to be like, okay, I'm watching the Spurs again, and they're playing that guy. Like, again, I thought that was an injury. You know what I mean? Like, it just, in my experience of watching the NBA, those things can sink you, and conversely can drive you, like it did the Wolves last year. That's why the Wolves, figuring themselves out all year, still managed to win as many games as they did, because they didn't play bad guys ever.
Right.
Ever. And
you said it, like there's so many times where we'll sit at Target Center and a guy will check in. It's like, he's playing still in the NBA and in the rotation. Like, just talent wise, like there's a divide. Like, oh wow, our 7th guy's way better than their 6th guy or whatever. Like that helps, like you can still get out basketballed for sure. But when the talent gives you a nice floor of like, if we both play the same, we're gonna win.
Yeah. All right, man. This was fun. These are our predictions: 53 for Jace, 51 for me. So I guess we're both on the over.
I think I put 59 last year, and it came out just a little short. So
your other predictions were good, though.
They were good. The wins and the 1 seed did not happen.
But what was
Oklahoma City was stunningly good for the team that was out like no centers to start the year.
Yeah, that's true.
I did say they were going to be a West Finals team that lost to the Thunder in the West Finals. Yeah, it was a rocky road to get there, but they got there.
Pretty damn good prediction. That's you would have got a lot. You would have got good odds on that if you would have.
Yeah, exact West Finals outcome. Yeah.
All right, man, this was fun. I'll see you at practice in like an hour, and we will. Yeah, next time we do a podcast, we will have an actual regular season Timberwolves game.
Wow. Well, 3.
That's right. It's a lot more than we've had. That's a lot more than we've had. Bunch of good stuff up at the Pioneer Press from Jace. I would imagine some of you listening right now are tapping back into the podcast for the first time. On a Monday before the regular season starts. I think that would be very normal to be doing. And I would say, dive in with a lot of the things that not only Jace's wrote, but Chris and John as well, too. You'll be able to get through all that's going on a lot quicker if you just read their articles than if you listen to like 40-hour-long podcasts that we've done this month. But appreciate you coming on, man. And next up, the next show that I do will be in Portland after the opener. Kyle and I will do an episode from the Moda Center there. So yeah, until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.